Hey everyone! So I'm sorry about the delay. We're trying to get YouTube live streaming together, but that was not working. So you guys will be here for this one. So today we're going to be talking about how to get into your dream college. I have a couple things that I will be discussing today, like my college process, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, and going through the Common App and talking about some tips if you still have some apps left that you're going to turn in. And also, I know a lot of you aren't seniors in high school, so you are going to be using these tips in the future to apply to your colleges. So I really encourage you guys to use these in the future. So at any time, if you have questions during this presentation, a really cool thing about this is that you can raise your hand and you can ask a question through video, or if you're not comfortable with coming up through video, just type in a question and I will answer that as soon as possible. So we're just going to start with our first presentation, which is going to be me just telling you about my college experience and giving you some tips. So if you are not familiar with me, I'm just going to do a quick introduction as we go to the next slide. Um, I'm a freshman at the University of Southern California. I make YouTube videos on the college process, and I'm also very involved with helping students get into college. So we can go to the next slide. Um, so I have a book out, and one of you attendees will be getting a free signed copy of my book. And if you are not one of the winners, you can also just check out my book and get it online. There's also a link in the session to go straight to the book and check that out if you want to. But not going to spend a lot of time on that. So let's go to the next slide so we can dive into some of the information. So here are a list of the schools I was admitted to and the scholarships I received. Um, as you can see, I got 3 full tuition scholarships, and then I got some other smaller scholarships. So if any of you are thinking about applying to any of these schools, know that they do have scholarships for you. And I just showed this slide during all of my presentations just to show that some schools where you think you might not get money, NYU, for example, where I thought I would not get any scholarships, I ended up getting awarded a full tuition merit scholarship. So don't apply to not apply to a school because you think that it's not going to give you money. There's always a chance for you to get money. So we're going to go to the next slide. And basically, we're going to talk about the process from the beginning to the end. We're going to breeze through the beginning stages because I know some of you guys are seniors and you guys really want to get into your application. So basically, if you are a freshman or sophomore or junior and you are thinking about applying to college, but you don't know where to begin the college search, I suggest that you just go onto Google and start looking up schools. And then not only are you going to want to look up schools, you also need to look up scholarships. So the thing I say to do is Google merit scholarships at blank university. If you've already applied to some schools, still do this because some scholarships have separate applications that are beyond just your regular application you submit to get admitted to the school. So um, some schools will have you fill out multiple applications to get full ride scholarships, minority scholarships, especially if you're going to play a sport or something. That is a whole nother sector of things like that. So if you are not very familiar with the school, you can look up things like the test scores they require, the GPA, the extracurriculars, and things like that. But one thing you want to always make sure you do, which I will stress throughout this presentation, is always look for scholarships that are at the school so you can use that to get a better hand on your applications. And we'll be talking about that as we go on with the presentation. So we're going to go to the next slide. And now we're going to talk about test scores. So I did a little survey and they said that they, as in the students, they said that one of the hardest parts of a college admissions process was getting their test scores right. So whether you are a freshman who knows nothing about the SAT or ACT, or you are a senior who's already taken it twice, you know that testing is a big deal. So One thing you want to do is make sure you are falling in line with the previously admitted students. So schools will tell you what types of scores that other students have that apply to the school. So you can try to make that for your goal score. And then just other things for tests, take practice tests, get a tutor, and do everything in your power to improve your scores. Because after you graduate high school, you're never going to have to take those tests again. So you might as well spend the time now trying to get that together. So we're going to go to the next slide. And let's talk about the application. So many of you are right in the middle of your application process. So even if you've already submitted half your applications and you have only a few left, there are still ways you can improve your app. So the whole second half of the session is going to be in detail on the Common App. But I just wanted to give you a brief little overview as we go through these slides. So your application is the one chance you get to advocate for yourself. And I'm sure you guys hear that all the time. And it's so true because you have your grades. Say your grades aren't the best. Say your extracurriculars aren't the best. But if you have a good essay, you have a good application, um, you can advocate for yourself and prove why you should be going to that school. So just take your time with your applications. You don't want to press submit and then realize you forgot something really big. And like I said, the second half, we're going to go deep into the application process, so stick around for that. We're going to go to the next slide now, though. Let's talk about essays. So your college essay probably stressed you out, and if you haven't applied yet, I promise you, choosing a topic and things like that, that's all going to confuse you. You're gonna be stressing about what's the right topic, or should you write too much, or things like that. So my main tip for essays is to choose something that you know, choose something that can tell a story about you, and don't try to tell your whole life story in a few paragraphs. So, for example, if you wanted to write a story about how you have been volunteering for 8 years at a certain organization, instead of writing about the whole 8 years, maybe focus on 1 year. Oh, instead of focusing on 1 year, focus on a particular day, a week, or a particular project. When you make your essay more specific, that helps you with your storyline, it helps you with your focus, and it really puts you in the shoes. So what I wrote about for my essay was how I was helping to increase diversity at my high school, diversity awareness. So I could have made a list of all the things I did, that I chose to choose one specific day, which was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I wrote about what I did that day to help increase diversity awareness in my high school. So that's entirely up to you what you write your essay about, but my main suggestion is that you make it about a specific event, instance, or time in your life, just so it's more personal. And my main um, pinpoint for essays is if somebody else could write the same essay or a similar essay as you, I suggest you try to revise your essay and make it more personal. So we're going to go to the next slide. Teacher recommendations. So most of you who are seniors will already have senior recommendations, um, teacher recommendations, but if you do not, and you're a junior, you want to make sure that you're not getting blind teacher recommendations. And by that, I mean you go up to a teacher and say, hey, can I have a recommendation? And then leave and then wait until they submit it to your Common App. You want to go to your teachers, maybe have a list of things that you want them to talk about, things that you don't want them to talk about. So an example is if you're writing your college essay about your volunteer experience, maybe you don't want them to write about your volunteer experience and they write about something different that will add to your application. You don't want your application to be repetitive, so you have your activities resume where you list all of your experiences, and then you have your essay, which might list some same experiences, and then your teacher recommendation, you don't want that to come in and say the same exact things. So obviously, you most likely won't get to read your recommendations, but that doesn't mean you can't make suggestions to your teacher. Say, hey, I would really appreciate it if you included this or you talked about this, um, and that will help you a lot. So those are ways to just make sure your teacher recs come out right. So if you have already submitted applications or you have a number one school coming up and some of these tips you did not use when getting your teacher recommendations, maybe either go back to the same teacher and say, hey, would you mind making a revision? Or going to a new teacher who you think would advocate for you better and just making sure they know when your deadline is and so they can get that in for your common application. So we're going to go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about interviews. So not everyone will have to do a college admissions interview, um, but we are going to talk about those who will. So if you're applying to an Ivy League school or you are going for a scholarship interview, you're going to have to interview. So basically what you want to do is go to your school website and find out if they offer optional or mandatory interviews. So I completed an in-person interview for USC and I did an over-the-phone interview for the University of Pennsylvania. So there are different types of interviews. There might be Skype interviews, phone, you meet at a place in your local city or town, or you might actually go to the campus. But the majority of schools don't have these types of interviews because they don't have time to interview thousands of students. But just some tips for those of you who will have to interview. Make sure that you use that time to let them get to know you. They have your application, so they're going to see your test scores and the classes you took. So you don't want to use that interview time to talk about that. You might want to talk about a specific activity, go more into detail of the one that means the most to you, or just use that time to talk about things that aren't on your application. And then just practice interview questions with your friends and family or a teacher. There are tons of interview questions online. And if you guys go to my website or my YouTube channel, I have resources on admissions interviews and all of these topics I'm talking about today. We only have an hour together, so that's why this is a very fast-paced session. So anytime you have more questions about this, make sure you go check out those other resources. Also, right now, if you guys have any questions, make sure you're using the resource, the Shindig raise your hand, and you can ask a question right now, and I'll answer it live. So don't wait until I leave. You have me right here, right now. So send me any questions right now, and I'll answer them throughout this session. Okay, we have a question. So we have, is it possible to have too many letters of recommendations? So yes, it is possible. So your school will have their requirements. So they might say you need one teacher letter of recommendation, or they might say you need two. I wouldn't suggest going over maybe one more of the required. The thing about having a lot of recommendations is most likely each teacher is going to have similar things to say about you. So you don't want your application to get repetitive. So the only reason to add on an additional recommendation is if you know that person is going to add a whole new area to your application. For example, I had a guidance counselor through middle school all the way through high school until I moved high schools. And he was from my previous school. So I asked him for a recommendation because I knew my current guidance counselor at my new school wouldn't be able to write as good of a recommendation as him. But the Common App requires that your current guidance counselor writes a recommendation. So I had two different guidance counselors write a recommendation. And that was an additional one. So that I thought that was a good reason to get another recommendation. There are some stories of students submitting like 8 recommendations and they get into a college. But you must remember that most likely a college admissions officer is going to be spending 3 minutes or less on your application. So don't waste their time or don't spend a lot of effort on your end when they might not even get to that. So Thanks for the question. If you guys have any more questions, send them by raising your hand, and they'll answer them for you. We're going to go to the next slide. Um, so this is a very um, this is a topic that a lot of students don't cover when they apply to college. They might not do this throughout their whole college process. So here's something that I think will benefit a lot of you, especially if you haven't started applying to college yet. So we're going to talk about on-campus connections. You must remember that it is an actual person who's reading your applications. It is an actual admissions officer who is approving who gets into the school. So these are people that you can talk to and build relationships with. Um, so you guys have questions about the college admissions process. Why not email your admissions officer from the school you're applying to, so that they can answer you and they can see your name and they can see that you're interested. So obviously, you can send emails to your admissions officers, but don't spam them. If you have genuine questions, reach out to them, introduce yourself, and tell them what high school you go to, because many times admissions officers are traveling to different high schools and they might be coming to yours. Um, you can also reach out to people in your major that you want to have. You can uh, say I was applying to the journalism school, so I reached out to some professors there to see if I had any advice. Um, or if you're a minority, connect with a minority organization on campus. So I reached out to the Black Alumni Association or at USC, and I got a mentor out of that. She didn't have any direct influence of me getting into USC, but now I can go to her whenever. She sends me internship opportunities, and just that we've been talking since I was in high school just helped guide me throughout the process. So people are willing to help. They are teachers, they are educators, they want to help students. So that's why they have their email and available to you. Um, and also see if there are any students at the school who are willing to talk to you. So we want you guys to go on Twitter maybe and look at some students who go to the school that you are applying to. Maybe reach out to them, say, hey, I'm applying to USC. Could you answer a few questions I have about applying or student life? Especially when you are trying to make your college decision and you have your acceptances and you're making your final choice. Obviously, you have me for USC, but if you have another school, which I guarantee you do, just reach out to some students, even in Facebook groups and things, and just say, could you tell me about student life? What are the pros and cons about your school? And then that can help you make your decision. So we do have a question, and it's about extracurriculars. So it says, will it put me at a disadvantage if I have many different extracurriculars on my transcript? So that is a great question. So the thing about extracurriculars is you have to really choose what you want to show up on your application. I was that person in high school who did every activity, but when it came to my Common App, I had to really think about what I wanted to include. So the way I went about it was I was applying to a journalism major in the journalism school at USC. So I made sure that all of my extracurriculars that had to do with TV and journalism were on my activities list because that made sense. I was applying to journalism, I was in the school newspaper, I did the school TV channel, things like that. Um, so I had won a couple of science fair events. I decided to take those off because I wasn't applying to anything science related, so I didn't want to waste space or confuse the admissions officers as to what type of student I was. Um, they don't want students who can do everything. They want students who can do one thing very well. So if you are applying for a biology major, try to put your science fair awards, any types of projects you did, and things like that. So make sure that you guys are using activities that make sense. So if you fill up every spot on the Common App activities list, great, but just make sure that they make sense and that those were things that you were committed to, because if it wasn't important to you, then it's not going to look that important on your application. So let's move on to the next slide. Um, That's the first half of the session. So this is a great time to ask questions. Once we move on to the next presentation, we're going to be talking about the Common App in depth. So send me any questions you guys have. I'll give you a few seconds to send those in if you do have any about this first half of the presentation. If you are just coming into the session, just raise your hand if you have any questions, but we're going to be moving on. My contact information is on the screen, so if you are just coming in, we are going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so we have 4 questions that came in. I'm just going to read them and answer them for you guys as we get them. So we have a question: how many extracurriculars do you recommend? So this is entirely up to you. I think the Common App has a maximum of 9 or 10. So it's up to you whether you think you should fill every spot. I think I filled almost every spot or left one blank, but I had way more extracurriculars I did over the course of 4 years than those 10 slots. What I did was I chose the extracurriculars that I participated in for all 4 years. So I was a varsity swimmer for 4 years, so I had that on there, even though, like I said, it didn't deal with my journalism major. That was something I had a big commitment in. Things that I did for 1 year or less, I took off. So I think a good minimum would be maybe 4 extracurriculars if you did them for a long period of time. But if you're talking about school involvement, do as many as you want. Just when you get to your application, you have some things to select from, and just know you have a limited amount of space to list your extracurriculars. So we're going to go to the next question. Did I take any SAT2s? Also, what AP classes did I take? So I did take SAT2s. However, I did not submit the scores to my schools. The reason I didn't submit any scores is because the option when I was applying was an ACT test or an SAT with a wait an SAT with SAT2 scores. So I chose the ACT route. I only submitted ACT. I did not submit SAT to any schools. So the SAT2s that I did take were English and math. I think I did not do well. I am entirely ACT oriented, and that's why I only offer ACT tutoring. I don't do a lot of SAT things. And then the AP classes I took, I think you asked. Let's see if I can name them off the top of my head. I took AP Literature and Language, AP Physics, AP Calculus, AP US History, and AP Psychology. So that's 6 total. My school didn't offer AP classes until junior year. So if your school offers them earlier, then take them as early as you can. So here's the next question. Is visiting a campus better than seeing it virtually? Yes, I think visiting a campus when you have the opportunity is always better. But we all don't have the opportunity to visit every school we can. So, first, I'd like to say the reasons why visiting a campus is better. If the campus is in a different state or region of the country, or even if you're an international student, different things can affect what you think of a school. So, for example, the University of Miami, I was obsessed with their school, but in Florida, it's very humid, it's very hot, and I did not see myself walking to class every day and being sweaty. I just didn't see that happening. So that's why I did not choose the University of Miami. So when I went to USC, however, there's no humidity. It never rains. It's sunny. I was like, I can see myself standing outside. I saw students in hammocks. I saw students like riding their bikes around. I was like, I can do this. Like, I'm just gonna move to LA. So that's why visiting a campus can be better. But if you can't visit a campus, here's what you have to do. One, YouTube. I have about 8 campus tours on my channel, but if you just type in campus tours on YouTube, they will come up. Second, you can look at vloggers on YouTube. So if you want to see like student life and not the college with their like stereotypical like promotion, you can look at college vloggers and see how they're doing at school and things like that. Like I said before, go on Twitter, Facebook groups. You can ask students how their experience is going there. So visiting is not always mandatory, but it can really help you cross out some schools on your list. Because I visited um, maybe 7 or 8 schools, and I applied to like 2 of them because I did not like them when we visited. So you guys do have a lot of questions, so I'm not gonna not answer them. Let's keep answering the questions because these might just answer things I would answer later in the presentation. So we're gonna go to the next question. How selective is USC's Annenberg program? So when you're applying to a school, they have different, each school has different ways they admit students. Some schools just care about the freshman class. So they have a certain amount of spots in the freshman class and they fill them. Some schools divide into different categories. So, like the Annenberg School, the uh, Dornsife School, which is like the liberal arts college at USC, the engineering school. Some schools like that have slots. So when you're talking about Annenberg selectivity, I don't think Annenberg is that selective. It doesn't have a lot of students applying to it compared to the Dornsife School, but um, it's not the Annenberg School who's making the decision. It's USC admissions. So it's you can't look at a certain school. You have to look at USC as a whole. So I think USC has a 16.5 acceptance rate. So that's the rate for the whole school, no matter what major you're applying to. We're gonna go to the next question. In DC, oh, you're from DC and you hope to attend USC in the fall. You was wondering how did I get adjusted from the distance from home? Um, yeah, so this is something that if you're going to college away from your state, even a couple hours from home, you're going to be the first time away from home. So the great thing about college is everyone's experiencing going away from home at the same time. USC does a really, really good job of keeping their freshmen busy, especially the first couple weeks. So there are tons of activities. Maybe a couple weeks and you'll be like, oh, I miss home. So make sure you schedule flights and things way ahead of time. I got my Thanksgiving flight from California to Georgia for like $80 because I scheduled ahead of time because I knew I would want to go home. So there are ways to go home. If you can't FaceTime home, I talk to my mom on the phone like every other day or FaceTime and things like that. So just because you're in college doesn't mean you can't talk to people. Yeah, so that's one way to adjust. But yeah, it just naturally happens. You get used to being away from home. When you come home, you're like, I'm so bored. I have nothing to do. I'm home for winter break now. So and I'm excited to start second semester. So you'll adjust, I promise. Next question. How do you apply to a community college? So so community colleges, most of them work the same way a regular college would work, but they might not use the common application. So what you want to do is Google the local community college and just find their website and click on their application. So it might be an application you download and have to mail in, or it might be an online application. So it's going to be very similar to a just one you would find on the Common App. So that's how you would apply. How do you get out of state scholarships? So, um, so scholarships are a whole realm, like you know, but if you are a student applying to a school out of state, make sure you know whether the school is private or public because if it's a private school, they can't just discriminate per se depending on what state you live in. So, for example, USC, their scholarships are offered to every student, international, whatever. Some schools, for example, UGA, which is the one of the state schools in my state, they have scholarships that are only for Georgia residents, and then they may have some scholarships that are only for out-of-state residents. So that's why you want to go to the school website, find the scholarships page, and just see what their requirements are. And that's how you would apply. I'm graduating early. Do you think colleges will like when a student graduates early? Um, well, that's a question you can email the admissions officers at each of your colleges. The thing about graduating early is there are different reasons why a student might graduate early. Say you are graduating early and you already took 8 AP classes and you got A's in all of them, great. Then graduate early and then I'm sure you'll get into college. I mean, all of you are going to get into college, it's just which one. But say you didn't take any AP classes and you were struggling in a math class, and graduating early will limit a college from seeing you improve during your senior year. So that might be a reason not to graduate early and take some challenging classes for one more semester. So there are pros and cons to graduating early, but you should be fine. I know students who studied abroad for a year. I moved high schools, so there's always special cases that colleges will accommodate and accept students. Just like when colleges accept like 12-year-old geniuses, like they didn't even get to middle school, so I'm sure you'll be fine going graduating early. So let's go to the next question. How can I get into college in the USA if you don't live there? So yeah, so there are tons of schools that accept international students. So I suggest that's all about research on your end, finding schools that have a large international student population. USC, for example, I think has like 20% international students. So it's not rare for students to come to the US to study. So my main suggestion for you, since it's going to be a lot of research on your end, is just to go on YouTube or go on Google and just search tips for international students applying to U.S. schools, or like top schools in the U.S. for international students. That can help you get started with your college process. How do you get your GPA up from a bad semester? Okay, so let's see. Why did you have a bad semester? Did you not study? Did you not go to class? What didn't you do? And then that's what you're gonna do the next semester. So if you only studied 1 hour last semester, then study 2 hours this semester. Just make sure that every time you go to procrastinate or go play 2K or go do something, think about that you could be studying, or you could be going to a teacher for help, or you could be watching, what are those people on YouTube? Like, the two brothers who make like the educational videos. I can't remember their name, but watching YouTube videos on a class you're struggling in, going to a teacher, like I just said that, but I'm saying it again. There are so many ways. Just make a list. Just go ahead, get a little piece of paper, make a list of everything you didn't do last semester. Or go to like the smartest person in your class and be like, "Hey, you want to study?" Yeah. So there are ways to improve your GPA just by changing the small things. So I wish you luck with that. If anyone's new to this session, we're doing a Q&A session, so just raise your hand and send questions. That's what we're going to dedicate time for now. If you already asked a question and you have more, then ask another one. That's why I'm here for this session, to give you guys some good information before you apply to college. What do I like the most about attending USC? Okay, there's so many things. I couldn't have been more happy with my college decision. I have cousins who have like transferred schools like twice already. I'm just like, well, they're not freshmen, they're like juniors, but I really am happy, and I think that I will spend all 4 years at USC. I like that my teachers know me. When I turned in my Spanish final, my teacher like gave me a hug, because you're not like a number. Some classes you might be, but most of my classes first semester were pretty small, so I like that. And then I also like how USC has a lot of like free events. I put free in quote because the tuition is ridiculous, and so you're basically paying for it anyway. But there's a lot of like activities on campus. I met a lot of famous people. Lupita Nyong'o, for example. Tavis Smiley came to the journalism school. A lot of famous journalists come to the journalism school. Um, so there's a lot of resources. I don't feel like I'm not gonna not get a job just because I'm a journalism major. I feel like I can get a job. So there's a lot of different things that were the reason I ultimately chose USC over other schools. Will colleges give you free visits to their school, and how would I get the opportunity to visit? Yes. Okay, so I got to visit. Um, okay, I'll tell you about my visits, then I'll tell you how you can get some visits. So, the University of Miami had a scholarship weekend. Basically, there's for scholarship people, mostly. So the University of Miami had a scholarship weekend, but they were the only school that didn't pay for anything. And so, um, USC, they paid for my flight and housing to their school, and NYU, yeah, they paid for like I think they paid one way, and then NYU paid for round trip flight and housing and like a dinner cruise, and like they went all out. Like NYU is very like that. So if you want to get some trips to visit schools. Basically, they're called fly-in programs. So go on Google right now, open a new tab or something, if you're the one who asked this question, and type in fly-in programs for high school students, and there will be some lists. If you're a senior, it might be deadlines right now or already passed. But the ones I got to go to, that was solely based on my application to the school. I did not know that they did that. They just uh, emailed me and said, "Hey, we're going to give you a scholarship or come interview for the scholarship." So I did not get like one through like a fly-in program where they just let students come. Mine were scholarship based. So we're gonna go to the next question. Whether your first SAT or ACT score is bad, I got a 140 trying to get 1170. So my first SAT score was bad. Um, like I said before, I did not submit SAT, and then I had to take the ACT 4 times until I got the score I wanted. So taking the test more than once is very likely, unless you're perfect and you got the perfect score the first time, then go you. But that's not the case for most of us. So I took the ACT 4 times. I did tutoring, and I finally got a score I was happy with. I'm just gonna tell you my score since you guys might ask that. I got a 31 out of 36 on the ACT. And the SAT, I got when I took the old SAT and I got a 1700 out of 2400. So I didn't submit that score. Which test is more important, ACT or SAT? Neither. They're both the same. Colleges don't care which one you submit. You just gotta submit a good score. So it's whatever the one that you do better on is more important. Yeah. So don't feel like you have to do better on one test or the other. If you're automatically doing good on one test, I suggest you drop the other one and keep improving and practicing for just one test because it's way easier to manage if you're just doing one test practicing instead of two at the same time. Will I be discussing how I got a full ride? Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that. I've been touching upon it in random places, but if you want like a nice explanation, I'll do that. So full ride, the ingredients to a full tuition scholarship are a good story. So when we talked about essays, we talked about having a story. So having that anecdotal essay I wrote about improving diversity during MLK Day at my school through writing. So I'm applying for a journalism major. So my essay was about how I wrote something that made an impact. My activities lists were all about being in the school newspaper, yearbook, TV club. I have a YouTube channel where that's kind of my on-screen presence. I did an interview at the school, and I prayed a lot that I would get money to go to college. And I basically waited and like ripped my hair out, hoping I'll get some money. So uh, a lot of scholarships and even admission is random. So sometimes if you don't get scholarships, it's not personal. For example, I got $0 to my local state school, but I got a full ride to NYU, one of the most expensive schools in the country. So it's very random. I cannot tell you why that happened or why, I don't know, because I was eligible for a full scholarship at my state school, but they still didn't give me anything. So don't put all of your hope into one school. Definitely spread it out. Just wait till you get your acceptances and denials, then make your choice. Don't be like, hey, I'm going to this school, and then you don't get in because nobody wants that to happen. Just chill, wait for your acceptances. I promise that, like, when I first started my college process, like, my top school was Florida State University. Nothing against Florida State, but when I applied to, I didn't even apply there when I applied to college. So everything is just like you wait, you see what people have to say. So try your best. Don't finish your application saying, "Oh, I could have done this better." Make sure you take your time. So that's kind of the formula to a full ride scholarship. So your grades, test scores, essays, and like you kind of have to be a full package for them to give you a full scholarship. Can I go over resume tips? So yeah, let's talk about an activities resume. So the main thing about an activities resume is that you most likely won't submit it to any schools. It's more or less a uh, personal tool to filling out your college applications. Times that you will use your resume is if you are applying to scholarships. Sometimes scholarships ask for resumes. Or if you meant an actual resume for like an internship or job, of course you need a resume. But components of your resume, in my book, whoever wins the book, lucky you, because I have, let me find the page. Oops. Um, I have like my activities resume in here. So um, like I said, all of you are going to be entered to get the book. But if you don't want to wait for the winner, which will be announced like within a few days, the link to buy the book is right there in the corner. But let's talk about my resume really quick. So on here, I had just my high school's name, my GPA, the AP courses I was in, my test scores, my extracurriculars, my work experience. I listed a college summer program I did, and then I listed like other interests where I had YouTube and talked about my YouTube channel. And yeah, so it was very brief, just the important stuff. And basically, I used my activities resume when just filling out my college applications. I didn't really use it. No school required that I submitted one. So don't really stress over that part of unless you're being required to submit it. Is taking only 1 to 3 AP classes by the end of senior year disadvantage, even if you take more dual enrollment classes. So this is something that I actually like was struggling with when I was in high school. I was trying to choose whether to do dual enrollment or just continue AP classes. And what I did was I emailed the admissions officer at USC and I said, "Do you prefer AP classes or dual enrollment?" And he said AP classes because USC wouldn't accept any of the dual enrollment credits, basically. Um, so that's one thing that depends on the school, definitely. But if you have a lot of AP classes that you haven't taken at school, then why put yourself through the stress of traveling to a college when you can just take a college class at school? Most likely, an AP class will be more credible, but everybody goes a different route. There are people at every single school that have done AP, IB, dual enrollment. So it's basically your route. So I definitely suggest talking to your guidance counselor, the admissions officer of each school you're going to, and then once you hear their feedback, then make your decision. How do you deal with rejection from college? So I was rejected from the University of Pennsylvania, and I was waitlisted from UNC Chapel Hill, and I just rejected myself. Basically, I took myself off the waitlist. So rejection is always going to hurt, even if you get into your top college. So basically, just know that it's not personal, especially the schools who are having acceptance rates under 30%. They might have not even read your application. You don't know what happened. Um, and so basically just know that you're going to college, whether you got all rejections and you're going to apply again to college, or you got rejected to all but one, you're still going to go to college, which is something that hundreds of thousands of kids don't get to do in some areas of the world. So just be thankful that you're going to get an education. And trust me, you'll make friends at whatever school you go to. You'll get good and bad grades at whatever school you go to. You'll have a college experience no matter what school you go to. And you can always transfer if you don't have a good experience. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to have an on-campus job as an undergrad? Um, Basically, just show up to school, and I promise you they'll be having job fairs. Students will be handing you like sign up things. Like that's how it is at USC. Like it's hard to not get a job on campus because they're like forcing it, and you're just like, I am already stressed about school, but yeah, getting jobs on campus is easy, especially if you have work study. USC is like a work study fair, so all the on-campus jobs have like booths, and you can just go sign up for an interview or something like that. I don't have an on-campus job, but I have friends who do, and like it was so easy. Like all they had to do was like go ask, and they basically got a job. How do you keep your grades up during high school? Right now, I feel so unmotivated to do anything and keep my grades up. So I'm not sure if you're a senior or if you're just a junior or something, but senior year, I definitely was unmotivated. But just remember that you only have high school once, and the point of high school is to get into college, basically. So just think about how you would feel if you got the rejection from a college you wanted to go to, and then you're like, dang, if I would have just studied one more test, I could have gotten an A in the class and then been in the college I wanted to be. Not to like make you depressed, but that's how, if a school sees another A, that can improve your GPA, and then you can get into a college. So when you feel yourself being lazy, be like, I want to be like that girl, like my cousin who got into Harvard, like or something. I don't know. Just know that pain is temporary, but GPA is forever. So yeah, just do your work. Yeah. I went to a different high school every year, and I don't know have a teacher well enough to write a letter for me. Um, yeah, I can relate to that because I moved, but when a school sees your transcripts, they're gonna see four different high schools on there. So if you have any type of recommendation, I'm sure they'll be surprised. Just ask teachers, maybe one from each school to write a recommendation. That's one of the cases where you might have over the required amount of recommendations, or just whoever you were closest with. Even though you might have just sat in their class, just find someone because there are requirements for recommendations. Um, if it maybe requires one teacher and one other, then maybe do the other as somebody who has been mentoring you or things like that. But definitely, if it says teacher, then you have to do a teacher. There's no way out of that. What kind of USC scholarship did I receive? I received the Presidential Scholarship from USC, which is a half tuition award. And then I received an Annenberg scholarship, which covered the other half of tuition, which is totaling about $50,000 every year for 4 years. And my family has to pay about 16,000 a year out of pocket. So full ride sometimes doesn't mean full ride. For me, a full ride was full tuition, but I'm not complaining because 50 grand a year is a lot of money. You're going to apply to USC. Any suggestions? So for the supplement, make sure your supplement you did research. Maybe talk about a class you want to take, a club you want to join, something you want to do while you're at USC. Make sure you're talking about the school specifically. Um, yeah, so supplements are your best way to improve your application for a certain school, I think. Did I ever consider going to a HBCU? Yes. Okay. So here's my HBCU app story. Why did I get so hyped over that? I applied to Howard University and I got in, and then I was waiting to see if I got a scholarship. I waited and waited and waited, and then I couldn't wait anymore, so I committed to USC. And then maybe around May, they gave me like a $14,000 scholarship. However, I did apply to this outside scholarship, which I was a finalist for. It was a full ride, like everything paid for, not full tuition, plus like stipends to a HBCU. And I was a finalist for it, but I knew I was going to commit to USC, so I dropped out of the scholarship so someone else could get the scholarship. And that is called the Tom Joyner Scholarship. So if you're applying to a HBCU, look up the Tom Joyner Scholarship, and you can get up to like 8 semesters, everything paid for, everything. How'd you ask your high school counselor for recommendation if they didn't know you as well as your own counselor? Well, uh, to submit your common application, your high school counselor has to fill out a form. So I technically didn't have to ask, but I went by and said, "Hey, even though I don't know you, I still want to get into college. So could you write some nice things about me or something?" I don't remember what I said, but the one that your current high school counselor fills out is pretty vague, and then they have the option to fill out a recommendation. So yeah, just talk to them. They are a high school counselor, so they're not going to be weirded out if you're like, "Hey, I'm new. Can I have a recommendation?" That's their job. So we are going to close soon, but we do have a couple questions left. So I'm going to answer these questions and then make sure you guys have all the resources you need. This is being recorded, so if you have friends or you want to go back and rewatch this because you wanted to take notes or something, go to my YouTube channel and it will be there. So let's go to the last remaining questions. Do you mind telling us what your GPA was? So going into senior year, so my freshman through junior year GPA was a 3.85, and then so that's what you send to your college. Like your senior year GPA isn't calculated into your college admissions basically. So yeah, so a 3.85, and then I think after senior year I had like a 3.9. So that's like all A's and like two B's, I think. Yeah. You really want to go to USC, but you're worried about the cost. So, yeah, USC is very expensive. I'm not gonna lie about that. So, like I said, one, don't depend on one school. Anything can happen in your college process. Two, make sure that your application reflects why you want to go to USC specifically. So if that means working or revising your Common App essay to kind of reflect why you'd be a good match for USC, make sure your supplement shows why you want to go to USC. They really want students who want to go there, and that's how they choose who gets the scholarships. Three, apply to outside scholarships starting now. Just start applying, and try to get some money ready But if you don't get into USC or if you can't afford USC, don't worry. There's another school out there that won't put you into a lifetime of debt. Sometimes not having debt is a better thing than going to a school that you think is great for you. There might be a better match out there for you. There's so many people who thought, like my peers who thought they wanted to go to a school and now they're in a different school and like they love it. So don't worry about that. Can you explain what you put for some of your short answer questions for USC? Describe yourself in 3 words. So yeah, the short answers, the ones that have like a space for like a couple words, those aren't something to stress out about. I remember talking to one of the admissions officers for USC about that. It's kind of just for them to get to know you. So just put what you really think. Don't try to be someone else. It's really just to get to know you. Like for my favorite TV show, I put SpongeBob because that's my favorite TV show. Like don't try to be like Law and Order and you've never like seen the show. Like put something that's actually true. Okay, so we have one more question left, and then we're gonna close out the session. How did you deal with senioritis? Oh, I'm so glad you asked because I just filmed this video yesterday on how to deal with senioritis. So I will be uploading that in the next few weeks, but like a sneak peek, basically just do work. Like no, just hand in all your work. Whether you halfway did it or what something, just do all your work and then like when you need your teacher to like bump up your grade or something, be like, hey, and they can't say you didn't do all your work because you did. So that sounds horrible if you're not a senior, but when you're a senior, you'll understand what I'm saying. Like, you don't want to do work ever. Just hand in all your work. So, thank you guys so much for coming to this session. So, if you want some resources right away, just go to joyway.com and I have a free resource library where you guys have some free downloadables. All you have to do is like enter your email and then you'll get the password to access those things. Also, the Facebook group for You Got Into Where, just go on Facebook and search You Got Into Where, and it's like a group of students who are like interacting and asking each other questions about college admissions and the book. So so many people have been giving me good feedback about the book. So if you're interested, make a purchase. And the giveaway winner will be announced on my social media, which is right there on the little slideshow. So the winner will be announced on there. And I thank you guys so much for attending. Sorry about the technical difficulties at the beginning. And I will see you guys next time.